Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and hanging and banging with me here on this beautiful day, one Mr. Brian E. Roach, my good buddy, colleague, pal, friend, etc. How you doing, Brian?
I'm excellent. I'm not going to talk about my hat, though.
So, as is customary here, when we have any kind of we started rambling before the show even started. Then we started rambling when we tried to get the show started. And then we rambled ourselves into a retake, which is just always hilarious. But we did kind of plan out a little bit of the format today. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers trimming their roster down from 91. That would include one international pathway player. And to make it to 91 over the extra 90, or the one over the 90. Blah, now I'm tongue-tied again, Brian. But we're going to keep rolling with it. But we realized there wasn't enough. Yeah, there's not enough surprises, movement at all to really just talk about the roster. It'd be like a 10-minute show. I mean, we're going to bitch and complain probably about some positions, but we've been hammering this home with every preseason game up to this point. So by all means, folks, if you're watching, listening, thank you for joining us. But if this is your first rodeo with us, go back a little bit. Check out some of these shows in the archives, because a lot of this stuff isn't just geared towards like Lions preseason. We really hammered like slot corner and stuff like that in that particular episode. So if we kind of gloss over a little bit of those things, I apologize, but I don't want to be a broken record. And we're going to get into the other teams in the AFC North, along with the Steelers, Bengals, Browns, and Ravens, what their records might be. Brian was trying to show us this older hat that he had that has Jerome Bettis' signature among some other people, and then he knocked his camera out of focus and everything else. So
that's what I mean. I'm not talking about it. I'm not talking about my hat. If you think it's dirty, it's not dirty. It has signatures on it, but I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah, but it was apropos because I was talking about like people get things like scribbled at training camp. It's hilarious because the kids, like I said, 91 players at camp, and somebody, they have no idea who's signing for them, you know what I mean? And just scribble, and then they look and they're like, oh, 54, who's 54? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so, especially like offensive linemen or somebody like that. Now, TJ Watt, I was asked earlier today, actually, I didn't mean to be curt or rude about it, but somebody was like, hey, you think you could get TJ Watt's autograph for me? I'm like, well, I look like I'm not Houdini over here. You know what I mean? Like, why don't we just ask for Taylor Swift's autograph while we're at it? Like, let's find something that's like out there. That's how difficult do you think it is to get? Because it's not easy to get. It's not. TJ Watt is not only one of the most popular players on the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's one of the more popular players in the entire National Football League. It's not like.
Well, that's not what I mean. Why would you want Taylor Swift's autograph?
Well, I don't, but somebody else, might be in music or trying to, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, even if you were asking for someone else's, like, Julius Welshaw, for example, is going to come up, number 48, the German-born player that was the IPP International Pathway Player exemption. He's on injured reserve. I might find difficulty finding Julius Welshaw's autograph for somebody. It's not... you're more of the autograph seeker. So I was trying to explain there's events and things sometimes where these guys go and do that, but geez, that was a little crazy,
Former sponsor and people we don't mention anymore. They're having a Joey Porter Jr. Signing upcoming, but it's going to be while I'm in Scotland, so I can't go.
Oh, that's sad. It's Total Sports Enterprises. We still like those guys. We're just, we don't have any current, what do you want to say, partnership or anything with them that we used to discuss all the time, had them on. That's an old show talking about autograph seeking, but man, it's like, just come out the gate with the unicorn. Why don't we? I'm like, well, sorry, I can't, but you got the bus on there. That would be a pretty difficult one to get these days if you don't go to one of these private signings or luck out at like a training camp practice or something. But now some of these players, maybe you got their signature, you were out there in Latrobe during the summer, and they're no longer Steelers. So I'm going to rifle off all the players that were the reduction, released, waived, because there is a difference between released and waived. And
there's a designation of terminated, which I thought was just mean.
Yeah, we
Why would
always
you
think.
why would you terminate them? That's just mean. That's like, they still could go on and have productive lives. You don't need to kill them.
I know it's not like they're insects or anything, but there is a difference to how some of that works. I think terminated is a specific word maybe for a vested veteran. Like Anthony Everett was terminated, for example.
Yes.
And that was several days ago. We kind of surmised that was going to happen. Nate Herbig was placed on the injured reserve list. There's some of the things with the rules with this. I forgot about this when I was talking before. I think it was in a previous episode. I don't know if it was with Zach, if it was with you, Brian. But they didn't have to do that whole, catch and release type thing that they used to do in previous years. They did change that at the league meetings this year where, okay, so injured reserve, you're allowed to bring 8 players back during the year, and a player could come back twice even if they need to. I mean, depending on what injury you have, how many games can you miss, right?
Right.
But they set out 4 games. They have to be out or on these lists for a minimum 4 games, and then it's a 21-day window where they're activated. Now, the 8 players doesn't mean 8 players. It doesn't mean Brian E. Roach gets hurt, he's on injured reserve, comes back, that's 1, and then he goes back on injured reserve, he breaks a pinky, sits out another 4 games, comes back. That still counts as 1 because he's just 1 player. No, it's 2. That counts as 2. And then that's it for Brian. Brian gets hurt a 3rd time, then just quit, man, because you can't stay healthy. But the thing that happened this time around is that you could, in advance of this 53-man roster, before someone, Jeremiah Moon, for example, is one of the players that was designated, and Dylan Cook, those were the 2 that were designated for return. So there's going to be 2 players that are using up that 8. And this is so you can't just hoard players. I heard a very good thing on this on the radio the other day, like the old Washington Redskins. They said they were famous for this probably before I was born. And they would have like 30 guys on their injured reserve. And so there's rules that you could anybody that's on like the injured reserve, they're done. If they're not designated, they can't come back, and you can only have up to 8 designations. So that means the following players done for the season. We knew Graylin Arnold was already placed there. Braden Fehoko. I mentioned Nate Herbig. Ryan Watts and Julius Welshoff. Okay. Love Julius Welshoff. 6'6", 265. Played the most snaps in the preseason. I really felt like he was going to have a way to maybe carve himself, be developed, carve out a niche, right? But Ryan Watts limped out in the Lions game. And I kind of forgot about it because the Lions game was a snoozer. There was a lot of backups playing other than the first, offensive units that came out there. But Ryan Watts is not designated for return. His rookie season comes to an end, whatever that injury may have been. Could have been the Steelers really didn't have a spot, or they had a preference of having someone else on the roster, or there's more moves to come. There's some of that goes on as well. But you didn't have to, let's say, cut someone like Darius Rush, a corner, wait for Darius to pass through waivers because he's not a tenured NFL veteran, which anyone under 4 years without, 9 or 10 games per season, you're not a vested veteran. You go through the waiver claim process. I'll get back to that in a second. Or they're just a straight up free agent. Like Everett, they terminated his contract. He just sits there. Hey, we'll sign you again in about a week. We have to allow this person, Watts, to make the 53, then place him on injured reserve, and then allow him to designate. Nope, that designation happens right out the gate now. So there's some a little bit different in how it's structured because a lot of players around the league were injured reserve with designation to return yesterday. So they'll all be out a minimum of 4 games. Now, that doesn't differ too much from Cole Holcomb, inside linebacker, that had the knee injury back in November.
Yep.
Started the training camp, did not come off of the physically unable to perform or PUP list. He still has to set out 4 games, but he's on a PUP list. It's not the same as the injured reserve because he was already an inactive guy to begin the offseason activities. So it works the same, like 4 games he has to sit, but he doesn't count towards the injured reserve designation. And then, of course, Cam Sutton's on the commissioner's suspended by commissioner list, out 8 games until he's reactivated or what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever it is, he comes off of the suspension. So He comes back, then they'll have to make a spot on the roster. There's probably an exemption for that for several days or a week or whatever until they do make that transaction. Yep. Marcus Golden is on the reserve retired list. So I think the two interesting ones, if you want to talk about surprises, are Dylan Cook, Jeremiah Moon, because they're designated for return. Moon has been playing as an edge, outside linebacker, back up to like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Dylan Cook made the roster as an offensive tackle last year, albeit inactive on game days. I just found it interesting that they did not designate like a Nate Herbig. Maybe his shoulder injury is very serious. His time frame unable to return. I don't know what happened with Ryan Watts specifically, but not designated to return. So, but Cook and Moon are. I would have probably never guessed that, although I kind of was penciling Cook in as like an 8th or a 9th lineman based on the depth chart.
I'm a little surprised by Nate, but like you said, it may simply be that the shoulder injury is so bad that the timetable was going to make it impossible for him to return. But other than that, that's the level of shockedness is there.
It's right there. And just to explain the waiver process again, anyone who's not a tenured NFL veteran, you don't have your medical paid for in the future, you don't have your pension and all those other benefits that the veterans get. You go through a waiver process. This is the second draft now for NFL teams. I believe it's 3 or 4 weeks. It will follow to start the season. The same as the draft order. So the top picks. Now, important to note, even though the Bears had the top pick, that was actually the Carolina Panthers pick. So they are first in the pecking order of the waiver claims. It goes all the way down. So, for example, the Bengals picked ahead of the Steelers in the draft, right? So the first few weeks here, somebody goes on waivers, which you have like hundreds of players out there on the waiver wire now. Teams could claim them. Multiple teams could claim them. But if the Bengals and Steelers both go to claim the same player, the Bengals have a higher priority claim and would receive that player under their current contract. So a lot of times you'll hear this. Somebody gets cut. Their contract is kind of sucky. Teams don't have cap room or don't want to pay the guy whatever he's currently being paid. Pass all the way through waivers, becomes an unrestricted free agent, free and able to sign with anyone, which is what will happen with the majority of these players. But the Steelers may pick up 1 or 2 off the waiver claims. Now, waiver claims means they have to go on the 53. They have to be on the active roster. This is not a practice squad type of thing. So it will be a free-for-all for the practice squad players that start getting signed here right after we're done with this. I don't think we'll have a whole lot to talk about there. There'll be a few names that we saw camp in preseason. I'll be back, like a Des Fitzpatrick, I would assume, wide receiver,
quarterback guy,
like that. John Reese Plumlee, I think so too. I think he'll be on scout team. They're not going to waste Justin Fields running around out there on scout team or giving him a mock other team's playbook and prepping him to be the opponent instead of versus the opponent. And especially, well, that's a good place to start with the 53, Brian, is quarterbacks, especially so. What do you think about the media? It's making me sick that they're like, Mike Tomlin hasn't named a starter. Like, Mike Tomlin does this stuff, with the exception of Ben Roethlisberger was a no-brainer. Mike Tomlin hasn't named like any starters, like let alone just quarterback. You could assume, I think
it's fairly safe to say he has said repeatedly, Russell is in the pole position. That's it. I'm done. He's like, until something changes, he's the guy. So what do you want me to say beyond that? And I think he just really likes to monkey with the media. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I already told you, so I'm not going to tell you again. I don't know why you need me to say it, but if that's what you're waiting for, have a nice couple weeks while I don't tell you anything else.
Yeah, it's generating the content and the clickbait. The only other thing I could kind of surmise out of this is that Tomlin, he's the old dog with maybe some new tricks. He hasn't had the ability to force an opponent to maybe think about who the starting quarterback's going to be. But it's just media conjecture. It's clickbait type stuff that's out there. We know it's going to be Russell Wilson. I mean, not that I'm going to do it, but I'd eat my shorts if it wasn't. I'd be shocked. That would be a true shocker. But just, it's coming. He's going to put out the depth chart. When's it come out? Next, maybe Monday or Tuesday ahead of the game. When they are ahead of practices before they lead into this game against the Falcons. Maybe I'll make them squirm a little more. I'll put both names in there. So I forgot who Raheem Morris is coaching down there now. So just make them think and have to prepare for 2 guys that are both, can be mobile quarterbacks. I don't know. It really changes much for the Falcons. So I meant to go through and talk about, but that was one thing with the quarterbacks. But the players that were okay, so the waived list, right? Kyron Johnson, LaQuay Washington, Jacoby Widman, Marcus Haynes, Zion Gilbert, Thomas Graham, Jacob Slade, Willington Pavilion, Tykeem Doss, Joey Fisher, John Reese Plumlee, Aaron Shamplin, Jack Coletto. A little bit of a surprise. I thought Arthur Smith was wanting to use a quarter or a fullback, a defined fullback other than Connor Hayward. Matt Sokol, who was just signed recently anyways. Rodney Williams, practice squad candidate. Jeray Jenkins, practice squad candidate. Deuce Watts, Des Fitzpatrick, terminated vested veteran Quez Watkins, LaMichael Pirine, and Jonathan Ward. Jonathan Ward, surprisingly, has been around the league like 5 years. I think he's gotten his time with other places. Ryan Watts, Julius Welshoff on the injured reserve, as we mentioned. Dylan Cook, Jeremiah Moon on injured reserve, designated for return. Cole Holcomb on the PUP list. And then they also released Kyler McMichael, Matthew Wright, Anderson Hardy, Keandre Thomas, Marquise Spencer, the linebacker Tizino, we couldn't say his name last time, Tyler Beach, Devery Hamilton, Dejan Edwards, perhaps him or Ward, a practice squad candidate too, Jacob Copeland, and TJ Luther. None of those names jump out at you as like, oh my goodness, the Steelers just got rid of star player A and C, and they kept star player B over this guy. Really, it's just
TJ Luther. They got rid of TJ Luther. Oh no, not TJ Luther. He's going to get snapped up immediately by Walmart.
No, I feel bad saying that. It's just insert name, right?
It's rude.
Nothing against them.
It's rude. I shouldn't say that about them. It's rude. They probably have some kind of other skill set. They're not going to end up, going welcome to Walmart.
Walmart greeters. Man, it depends on how old some of these guys are, though. Like, not to be ageist, Brian. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be good with you. But that leads into the rest of the roster, which we could hammer out fairly quickly. Let me see. As I pull it up here on the screen that I did not have prepared. How much bigger, they make this stuff like so tiny. I'm going to try and get this bigger on the screen so everybody can see it. There we go. There it is. So your quarterbacks, woo-hoo, alphabetical order. So it's Kyle Allen, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Running backs, also not a surprise, Najee Harris, Cordero Patterson, Jalen Warren. Steelers did have a transaction or transaction looming for Bart Scott, who had a pretty good preseason. Formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles, he was with the Rams and had a good preseason. He's going to the practice squad per reports that leaked out after all of these roster cuts had happened. So we'll see how serious Jalen Warren's injury is. And, of course, they'll be able to call up 2 players on game day because they have a ton of offensive linemen. They meet the threshold to be able to do that. You have to have a minimum 8 offensive linemen to call up 2 players from the practice squad. So the elevations will be coming. Wide receiver. So this is always a fun area. I don't know why everybody's heads exploded over this, but Kelvin Austin, Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, George Pickens, Roman Wilson. This is basically what we've been saying like the whole summer.
What did you think it was going to be?
I think people were surprised about Scotty Miller, and I wasn't. Like, I started seeing him play special teams, returning punts. He was in coverage units. Scotty Miller earned the job. He's been fantastic as you can be playing in shorts and against lesser competition. Dude gets open. He's been catching everything all of these quarterbacks have been throwing his way. I'm fairly impressed with that. He reminds me of, Brian, like we talk about some of the smaller wide receivers and whatnot. Eli Rogers. That's who he reminds me of.
I remember Eli.
You don't have to have a higher expectation than that. But there's been other guys that have tried to fill that role, like a Ryan Switzer or a Gunner or anybody like that. But I give Scotty Miller a little more credit. Plus, he's an Arthur Smith guy. So here's the $1 million question. Do the Steelers, are they hunting for any other wide receivers? I say there's nobody else that's out there that was cut. Like Tim Patrick is linked to the Lions right now. Tim Patrick, to me, joins this team. The only thing he adds is that he's 6'4". He doesn't add anything else statistically. People are like, oh, he's better than Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson's had more yards and as many touchdowns. Tim Patrick has not had more yards or more touchdowns than Van Jefferson has. So we'll put it that way. A guy that's been in camp, they're probably on equal footing, but not one's better than the other. Most of the guys that are being released are like the guys that are already on this list, other than George Pickens.
I said all along, I think that they would do something, but at this point, that may have passed, right? I'm sure they tried to do something. I'm sure they consistently tried to do something, whether it was the 49ers guy, whether it was the Seattle guy. I know their names. I just don't feel like talking about it. But whether or not it was, I think the time has passed. Would it be out of the? It's not going to be they might pick up somebody off of the waiver wire, but unlikely, because as you said, you're not going to get anybody that is heads and shoulders above what you've got right now. So why bother? If they feel like if they really feel like they're in a bad position, sometime in the next couple weeks, they'll figure out a way to do something.
And we've been talking about this for a while. Yeah, I think the Ayuk thing's just a smoke screen for him to leverage his current team in order to get more money. And I don't want to pay $28 to $30 million for a wide receiver too. Some people will say, well, he's kind of borderline. He could maybe be a wide receiver 1. If you believe Pickens is a 1, what does that make Ayuk then? 1A or B? Like, I think he's still a 2 if he comes to the Steelers, and you're going to pay a lot of money for that player. Deebo Samuel is the wide receiver 1 with the 49ers. And Ayuk might not even be the first, second, or third thought when you factor in George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. And that's a good segue for the tight ends. I was surprised here. But one thing we need to mention and continue, I think, beating the drum for is that Pat Freiermuth has legitimate, claims to being a wide receiver 2 in this Arthur Smith offense. I think we're going to see an uptick. Knock on wood, he stays healthy. Darnell Washington makes this squad as well. And then, remember, this was on my initial way too early, and I pulled him. You talked me out of it. Another Arthur Smith guy that's been around with them. This is going to be his 6th NFL team. Michael Pruitt. How many years has he been around now? He's 32 years old, so I think he's in his 11th season. He's entering his 11th season. But he's an Arthur Smith guy. And just thinking about this, when you have a physical position such as tight end, we know Freiermuth's been so injury, concussion history. It probably behooves you to have a backup plan in place, or at least maybe a blocking tight end, a Pruitt type guy, to limit the physicality of a 17-game season on the body of a Pat Freiermuth. Darnell Washington, I don't think it's going to matter. Guys are just going to bounce off of him. So the reason we thought that maybe Pruitt doesn't make the squad is because Connor Hayward dual-listed tight end fullback. So Connor's in. We had a little bit of suspicion or concern as to his utilization, I should say, on this roster or on this depth chart. So can't get it all out, man. I'm glitching a little bit today. That's what happens when you have to.
Just showing that you're in the Matrix. That's all.
Yeah. I saw the black cat go by twice, stopped and whatever. Anyways, right, blue pill me. I want back in. I don't want to know all these other things. Just ignorance is bliss. Offensive line. Okay, I think I'm more surprised. Was I surprised here? No, because Herbert goes on injured reserve. We said they probably need somebody to play backup center. So Ryan McCollum sneaks on this roster. They have Spencer Anderson, James Daniels, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Broderick Jones, McCollum, Mason McCormick, Dan Moore Jr., Isaac Seumalo. No major surprises here because Dan Moore more than likely is starting the season as left tackle. And I know some people now following us closely be like, huh? But they had 3 draft picks this year on the line. Broderick Jones represents another one of those. That's 4 in the last 2 years, taking up half of, and Anderson too. I'm sorry, 5 recent draft picks that are taking up the space here, so to speak. So the only real incumbent is Dan Moore Jr., even though McCollum's been with the team, practice squad and whatnot. Nothing that's a major surprise. Now it's like, well, where do you borrow from? Were you going to keep 6 wide receivers? Were you going to keep how many defensive linemen? And this is where I think I was more surprised, because when we talked last show, we were talking about Dean Lowry isn't talked about at all. Another guy, it's like about a 30-year-old. He's has 8 seasons in the NFL, entering his 9th. And then you got Logan Lee, a 6th round pick, and you hadn't heard much. Logan Lee had 2 assisted tackles and 3 halves of football over the preseason. You're just like, is this one of these 6th round guys that just not what we thought, late round pick and just goodbye? But they both make the roster here. They both make the cut, along with Montravius Adams, Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward, DeMarvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk and Larry Ogunjobi. And I'm not terribly surprised that Loudermilk makes the cut or any of the other guys that are there. It was more Lee and Lowry for me.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised by any of it.
Okay, and then moving along. Oh, let's see who else we've got here. The linebackers. This is where I think they keep Lee, Lowry, Leal, these type of guys in case they have to play on the edge, because there's really only Nick Herbig behind Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt making the roster with Tyler Matakevich, Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts, Mark Robinson, and Peyton Wilson. So all of those inside linebackers, as we kind of predicted, all making the cut there. They have quite the crop to pick from, I think, this offseason. Just a matter of what they feel they have for edge depth, how much playing time they give to Herbig. Maybe somebody like Lee, Lowry, maybe somebody else can push over, just kind of take a little off the load if need be. Because we know that the cupboards get a little bare if TJ Watt isn't on the field, as we've seen in the past, and there's no replacing perennial defensive player of the year like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a little encouraged that DeMarvin Leal might be able to step in and make some contributions there, since he's dropped some weight and he looks, like he had a decent preseason. So maybe that's the role that they're targeting him for now. But they just put him in where they put him in because that's what he is right now.
And we go to the defensive backs, just to name them real quick. This is your corners and safeties. This defensive backs because Mike Tomlin has a lot of Swiss Army knife utility type players, dime backers and stuff. Beanie Bishop, presumably the starting slot corner. Deshaun Elliott, Jalen Elliott, who snuck in. I had him listed on the article the other day on the website for the predictions, because he started to really show here late in the preseason, especially when those games came on. I felt that I was like, they're looking at this guy a little stronger. He may have like a Trenton Thompson type, Elijah Riley type upside where, he might not be active on game days. Maybe he will. Ryan Watt's injury definitely aided Jalen Elliott making the team. Of course, Deshaun, free agent, formerly of the Ravens and Dolphins, that was signed this offseason. Minka Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson, DeMonte Casey, Miles Killebrew, Joey Porter Jr., Darius Rush, and Corey Trice Jr. And I know some people think that the corner room is a little bare. I'd say maybe pump your brakes. The kind of the hype train that was over Corey Trice last year that kind of fizzled because he got hurt and didn't play in any games. I'm back there. I'm back on it. I think we need to get back on board. And Darius Rush to me is no more than like a James Pierre type. But as far as like your top corner backup, I know it's not veteran, but Corey Trice is being groomed to probably jump in should Dante Jackson not play up to the level anticipated when they traded for him. Or this is the only year on his contract here in Pittsburgh. He may not be brought back next year, and then it's Trice and Porter going forward, depending on Jackson and Trice's trajectory.
Yeah, get those two avatars out there.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, special teams, Boswell, Cameron Johnston.
What? Chris Boswell beat out Matthew Wright?
Yeah,
what?
No,
How is that? What? Okay, I'm sorry.
Hey, you know what? We don't have to make any smart ass jokes about punters or having
big fat punter. Other than it's who is it? I can't even remember the comedian that he is.
Bill Burr.
Bill Burr, yeah. Other than Bill Burr is our punter now. Yes.
Yeah. And in Christian Kuntz. And that's your 53-man roster, folks. Don't have a whole lot else to add to that. It was more or less, I guess we had enough to talk about with that. We're going to have to hammer out these schedules pretty quick, my friend. But I want to get this ahead of the Labor Day holiday weekend. I hope everyone gets to enjoy the close of summer here. It's been mid-90s all week where I live. It's just been, sweating my tootsies off over here. So let's see. Let's see if there's any other breaking news before we jump in. But it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of roster moves.
I have some breaking news.
Okay.
I have switched from Polar to Rambler. Sparkling water.
You got to know when to hold them. No, that was the Gambler.
This is Texas limestone filtered blackberry sparkling water from Austin, where it's weird because you want to keep Austin weird.
Austin, Massachusetts.
It's pretty good, actually.
Austin, Massachusetts.
Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Austin, Texas.
That was the old Tom Green line in Road Trip. years ago.
Alexa, dismiss. She was about to say something and I didn't want her to.
Never know. Just keep her in line, Brian. That's what we're going to say.
Trying to smack down on Alexa there.
Okay. 4 teams in the AFC North. A little bit of a lightning round. It used to be that I would reserve the lightning bolt for Zach, but I don't know where Zach's been. So we've got to know when to hold him, know when to fold him. Man, I said the Gambler. You totally missed that. That was the Rambler. That drink's called the Rambler, right?
The Rambler. It's not the Gambler. I heard you. I just don't acknowledge Kenny Rogers' comments.
I'll punch you in the face, Kenny Rogers. Another one that you don't watch is Step Brothers. So, on the surface, AFC North teams: Steelers, Bengals, Browns, Ravens. Steelers better or worse than last season? On the surface.
On the surface, we were sort of skimming onto this.
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, you would assume the defense is better, but you cannot make a judgment on the offense, right? You just can't. There's too many unknowns right now. We don't know. We are assuming they may be better, but do we have evidence of that right now? No, we really don't. But fingers crossed. So I'm going to tell you, do I think they're a better team? I think half of the team is better.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think the defense better than last year. Going to have to be playing in an AFC North where all of the teams had a winning record last year. It makes me cautiously optimistic about the Steelers because while we think that a lot of people are making predictions, I was talking about the preseason magazine I read, the Lindy's, they have them 4th again. I'm like, when did the Steelers ever finish in the basement? And there's all kinds of crazy things that could happen, but betting against Mike Tomlin not having a losing season, it doesn't seem like a fair bet. Particularly when you upgrade the quarterback position. They were able to crawl into the playoffs as the final seed in a highly competitive division, going 5-1 against those teams in the division, including the team that got the number 1 seed in the bye, the Baltimore Ravens, that won the AFC North, which I don't think is all in the cards for them this year either when we get to them. But I do think the defense being better and the offense could still be bad, but I still think the offense is going to be better than it was last year. So there might be some tight games. You might be winning it off of, Chris Boswell's foot and stuff like that, but that's not any different than any other year that it's Mike Tomlin or AFC North football. So, Cincinnati Bengals, Brian. Joe Burrow's coming back, but there's some, I think there's some trouble in paradise there as far as that team.
There clearly is, and he has to stay healthy. If he can't stay healthy, it doesn't really much matter. The Bengals will be a good team if Joe Burrow is healthy, regardless of the drama that's going on, right? They'll be a good team. They'll be a solid team.
Yeah, that drama by for everyone that's listening or wondering what we're talking about, just to kind of point it out a little more, is Jamar Chase wants paid, T. Higgins wants paid. They don't have Tyler Boyd anymore. They don't have Joe Mixon anymore. And then Amarius Mims, who they drafted to be one of their tackles, probably going to have Trent Brown playing there because now he's already dinged and hurt, I think, a pec. So we don't know how long that dude's going to be hurt. Yeah, I heard pec muscle. So they've had trouble. Orlando Brown, they brought in, was supposed to be the big free agent, and he wasn't doing so swell last year to keep Joe Burrow healthy. And now Joe Burrow has a new offensive coordinator because Brian Callahan, and he took his dad with him from Cleveland, who was the offensive line coach up there. I think that'll hurt Cleveland as well. They're down in Tennessee now. So I think there's some adjustments. I think there's some things. Do they still have some firepower? Yeah. If they have a healthy Joe Burrow has always played like crap to start the season. Those first 2-3 games, and he hasn't played for since last October? And he wasn't healthy last year. So I'm not ready to anoint the Bengals as a contender in the NFL. Like a lot of other people are just immediately, here's your crown king. And I'm like, they added Mike Gesicki, for example. You know what I mean? But I don't know that Gesicki is supposed to have been the second coming of like a Gronk for how many years and how many teams. I don't follow it. You got Zach Moss, who's been a decent backup, but it's just like they got some bodies, right? Zach Moss and Chase Brown, and to replace Mixon. I don't know that he's better than what Mixon, or provides better than what Mixon did there. I think they have some troubles there. Now on defense, Trey Hendrickson, I think, is very underrated. You have Sheldon Rankins joins that team as well. The pair with BJ Hill, Sam Hubbard. You have Joseph Asai. You've got some guys that are there that in that front that I think are pretty solid. You got Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson, although they played down some last year because the secondary was not good, and they lose some guys. They're going to try and play Dax Hill as a corner now. You still have Mike. Oh yeah, because they lost Chidobe Awuzie. They have Cam Taylor-Britt, and then Von Bell returns after leaving for free agency for a year or so, and Geno Stone they signed over from Baltimore. So their safety play should be better than what it was last year, where they lost Bell and Bates. But I still don't know that they've got that whole corner situation or that one side of the field. But it's gonna be Dax Hill or DJ Turner. And I don't know that either of those guys. Depends what Jordan Battle can end up doing. But you have a lot of young players to fill a lot of question marks. And if that secondary doesn't get it together, Pratt and Wilson, they're going to struggle, I think. So that's my take.
Like I said, I think that team they rise or fall with Joe Burrow, right? If Joe Burrow's playing, then it doesn't really matter how bad the defense is, because they'll probably be able to keep up in any shootout that they're in, especially with both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase out there. If Joe Burrow's not playing, then, everything goes to pot. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that it will not be a three-peat of injuries for Joe Burrow. He'll make it through the season, and that they will be a solid team.
It's funny, though, because
doesn't mean I think they'll win the division. Just means I think they'll be a solid.
No, I don't know about winning the division. There was a lady that called into the one radio show, and she was a Bengals fan, and she's like, well, they'll sweep the Steelers, but they usually split like the Browns. I'm like, lady, Pat Kerwin had to point out that
I don't think they'll sweep the Steelers either.
Yeah, I had to point out that Joe Burrow has a losing record in the AFC North for the games he's been able to play, which isn't, that doesn't show well for him. I understand the one was against Mitch Trubisky and the like 80 play like overtime fiasco with no long snapper and everything else. The Steelers handled that game. They nearly blew that one. Ravens, we used to give the Ravens the knock. The same we were saying with Joe Burrow, we got to be consistent. So Lamar Jackson's been able to stay healthy. They added Derrick Henry. Their offensive line kind of all over the place now. Like I think they lost Kevin Zeitler. You have Ronnie Stanley, who hasn't been necessarily the same. Linderbaum's in the middle as their center. He's been pretty solid player. I think they had to put him in a Pro Bowl or whatever. I think Ravens, that type of thing. I don't know if he's Pro Bowl level. Some of it I think is. He's definitely better than average. We'll put it that way. I'd be happy if he was with the Steelers. But I just don't know that he's not all pro. You know what I mean? He's not Marquise Pouncey or somebody like that. Roger Rosengarten, who played on that same team with Troy Fautanu on the opposite side, he's going to try and slide in there as one of their tackles. So it's going to be, they got that monster Daniel Falele. I think that's how you say his name. You remember the big guy, maybe as a guard, but they've got some new bodies in there for this offensive line, and they're going to have to do this, of course. Derrick Henry, that should scare you. Derrick's 30 years old. They run the ball. It's what they do well. You got Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar. They drafted Devontae Walker. I don't know where to place that as far as the Ravens offense. You go to their defense and some of the guys they were able to keep, like Justin Madubuike, but they're going to Odafe Owe. They're going to have to count on him. They're going to have to count on Michael Pierce to continue stepping up. Roquan Smith, Trenton Simpson steps in, hopefully, to fill the shoes of Patrick Queen. I would say not hopefully, because I want to see the Ravens stink. Marlon Humphreys there, paired alongside Brandon Stevens, who's played above his original draft level. And then you have Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton. Plus, they signed Eddie Jackson for some depth and drafted Nate Wiggins. So the secondary still appears to be strong, as their edge rushing guy that they kind of put out there. No longer Jadeveon Clowney, but they kept Kyle Van Noy, who's like 35 years old or something crazy too. So got to keep an eye on both sides of the football for the Ravens. John Harbaugh, good, if not great coach. I think he'll have his team prepared and ready. They play a Thursday game to kick this whole thing off with Kansas City for the whole NFL season. But I don't know if I see the Ravens. They'll be competitive for sure. Are they going to be a juggernaut like we saw last year? I don't think so. I think some other teams are more prepared to defend them too.
Juggernaut as long as they don't play us, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
I mean, I still, to be honest with you, I still think it's probably the Ravens division to lose. but I think there's a better chance that they lose it this year than maybe in years past. I still slot that until they can beat us. I'm going to assume they're going to lose to us, right? They haven't beaten us yet in 100,000 years or something like that. Whatever it is, some incredibly lengthy streak of they haven't been able to beat the Steelers until and that's with the crap that we've thrown out there on offense.
Well, they didn't quite play everybody for that last game against Mason in the rain either, but
still, they've lost. So I do think Patrick Queen will make a difference. I just, my view is until they beat us, I'm not going to assume they can. So that's 2 losses. They'll probably beat the Bengals because they've been beating the Bengals. They'll probably split with the Browns. So, it's all the other teams they have to play. And starting with Kansas City is not a great way for them to start. So I think that, they don't have the toughest schedule in the league. We know who does. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson, still a little soreness in his shoulder, hasn't thrown in the preseason. 63 million plus toward for a cap hit the next 3 seasons. Browns might finally be out of that trade now, and we'll have a first-round pick next year. But is this their year? I'm telling you, I think the Bengals window is already closed. And I think that the Browns window is closed as well. If not, this is it for them as far as any kind of window. Their defense with Jim Schwartz last year, a lot better, but now a new offensive coordinator. They lose their line coach, Bill Callahan. I think some of the injuries that they've had there with some of these guys, we're going to see how healthy they are with that offensive line if they could continue going. Jack Conklin, some reinforcements coming back healthy off of whatever PUP list or whatever that he was on. Mm-hmm. But it goes the way of Watson, and they got 4 quarterbacks on their roster right now after the cuts. They're talking about trading probably the most talented of these guys, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like, what are you getting out of this if you're trading DTR? I don't know if I like that move for them, but go right ahead. Throw away your most promising quarterback that you're developing because you'll never get on the field behind Watson in his contract. Are they going to bench Watson for Jameis Winston? How much better is that going to look? Winston, of course, the only guy in NFL history to be in the 30-30 club, 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. He's a gunslinger, but he's not the most accurate of quarterbacks. So you got Amari Cooper, you got Elijah Moore, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got David Njoku, but you don't have Nick Chubb. You have Jerome Ford, you have Pierre Strong. Devonta Foreman was cut, maybe goes back to the practice squad, but they'll be without Chubb to start the season. 4 games at least. We'll see what his recovery is like. So I don't know that they have the most dynamic offense. We saw what Joe Flacco was able to just throw it all around the field. And then it's like they're playing with injured guys, and then they Stefanski's supposed to be the offensive-minded guy, right? Well, he's still there, and then he gets rid of his offensive coordinator as the scapegoat for everything that happened. I thought that was pretty lowbrow. I don't think that's just the Cleveland Browns being a poverty franchise and Jimmy Haslam doing the things that Jimmy Haslam's going to do. Defensively, Myles Garrett, not my defensive player of the year. Delvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, Zadarius Smith, a pretty formidable group up front. They finally got the guy opposite Garrett right. Even if Smith doesn't get a lot of sacks, he's still a steady enough guy. So they will put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. You got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah as one of your linebackers. And then it gets a little ugly, Brian. You got Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush in the sea of people that could be starting as linebackers on that second level of that defense. And I don't think that's going to help. That's not going to help these guys whatsoever. Denzel Ward is one of your corners. Martin Emerson, another guy that overachieved and kind of made Greg Newsome into being a slot corner after being a first overall pick several years ago. Grant Delpit, he's finally kind of coming around. Juan Thornhill, I think Juan Thornhill is just kind of like one of those journeyman type of guys. So the defense played really well. It was Jim Schwartz's schemes. You got all of this on film now. You got a good defensive front. The linebackers are really iffy. The secondary is a mixed bag of good and bad, I believe. There's your Cleveland Browns playoff team last year.
I think the defense will still be solid. Mm-hmm. They may not be the same as last year. They may be, right? It'll depend. If the front four, if their front can consistently break things down, it'll cover up for a lot, right? If they can't, then it'll expose whatever weaknesses are in the back end. But I think they're in a very similar situation to the Steelers, right? Right now, you've got a lot of unknowns about the offense. The only difference is they have Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy, and we have George Pickens and a bunch of other guys, right? They have more names in their receiver room than we do. Doesn't mean they're going to be any good, right? I think the offense is still very much an unknown because who knows what Deshaun Watson has or is not, and how long he's going to or when he's going to be healthy. I don't know. So it's a very similar situation. It won't surprise me again this season if every team in this division has a winning record. It's not a bad division. It's a solid division. We may split with the Browns again. It's hard for me to say we're going to sweep just because we tend to be, those are nasty matchups. They're getting to be on the level of Raven type matchups in their aggressiveness. But you just don't know.
Well, we're going to go through that, my friend. I've got a rudimentary Excel sheet that I threw together here. I may or may not bring this up on the screen for everyone to follow along, but let's just do it. We've got all 4 teams' schedules, and we kind of just almost kind of blind, right? So we're going to do this at Atlanta. We're going to have more to talk about with this next week, but the Pittsburgh Steelers opening up in Atlanta. A lot of people are looking at this as Atlanta as, they added Justin Simmons, and they traded, who was the one pass rusher they just went and got? I'm trying to think now. My mind's, it's escaping me, but they've added some players. They went and bought Kirk Cousins. I'm not sure the depth was there as a base. This isn't like Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers where Winston threw all those picks. They turned the ball over a lot. They had a lot of first-round picks and solid players that are in place. You got Kyle Pitts maybe, or like a Drake London. But the Falcons do not scare me overall as a team when it comes to the Steelers. If anything, at the worst, they may be evenly matched. But I think the Steelers' defense is going to swarm all over this team. I have a win to start the season for the Steelers in Atlanta.
My hesitation comes from the fact that I don't trust the offense yet, right? I don't think that they will get blown out. I think the defense will keep them in almost every game that they have on the schedule. But I do think they have a very, very small buffer zone. They lose anybody on defense for any extended period of time, and I think they have trouble. All that being said, I think probably they win that first game. My caveat is I just don't know what offense is going to show up. And if they are the offense of the first 2 preseason games, well, I'm not sure field goals is going to win the game.
You know what? I know it wasn't all starters in Detroit. It really wasn't all starters for the Steelers but it was enough positive to just say, well, Russ made that look real easy. So it wasn't a struggle bus either.
That's why I said the first 2 preseason games.
Okay. So
do you have of the first 2?
Do you have a win against the Falcons?
I tentatively have a win.
Okay. I'm going to mark it down. I'm putting both of ours on here.
Yes.
At Denver, Russell Wilson revenge game. I have a dub. There's no way. Bo Nix.
How much I hate going to Denver. And just the history of going to Denver and how much it bothers me. I don't know. I think we win that game as well. The same reasons hold true as what I talked about in Atlanta, but I think we probably win it.
Okay. So 2-0 to start would be nice. Then at home versus the Chargers to open up. This is the Jim Harbaugh era Chargers. Justin Herbert that isn't really all that healthy. I don't know. I'm not sure their identity is probably going to be run the football. Is their line good enough? Is anything good enough with this team right now? Who's their wide receivers? You know what I mean? And this is one of those, again, a West Coast team coming over to play a 1:00 game. Steelers, if they're already riding the momentum of 2-0, I'm going to give them 3-0 here as well. I mean, we're homers, dude. It's okay. The
biggest problem I have with this game is, and the reason that I would lean more towards the Steelers than not, is one of the things you said. Who the hell are the wide receivers for the Chargers right now? And are they going to be any good? I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to go with a win.
I'm pulling it up just so
I'm not able to fully stomach them being 3-0 at the beginning of the season, but I'm going to go with a win.
Yeah, it could very easily be 2-1. I acknowledge that, but again, this is on paper, and we know where the bulk of everything's going to lie later in the season too. So
yes.
This is the first half is much easier. DJ Chark, Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey. Those are the
Chark and then the rookie.
And Will
McConkey
Dissly
will probably be good.
Will Dissly is Hayden Hurst, and then you got Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. Like, we'll know a couple weeks in if they're.
Am I allowed to like J.K. again now that he's not with the Ravens? Probably not.
Don't see any reason to like him.
That purple stink is still going to be on him forever.
Okay, Steelers got another third road trip in the first 4 games. This one's a little shorter, maybe even a bus trip to Indianapolis to play the Colts. It's another standard 1:00 game. I'm struggling what to do with this because if it's really 3-0, can you see them going 4-0? But I don't see the Colts still have all of the same problems that the Colts team still had, regardless if it's Anthony Richardson or not. He didn't play a whole lot last year. It's almost like you're still playing a rookie quarterback. So I'm going to give it to the Steelers defense on this one.
I'm going to lean on the Colts here, and their only reason is the short week.
Okay. Short week.
Did you say it's a short week?
What? Short week.
I thought you told me it was a short week.
No, it's a standard 1:00 in the Dome, Indianapolis, just a road trip.
Oh, well, forget it then. Fine, they're 4-0.
Yeah, no, okay. All right.
Damn it. Stop making me overestimate them.
Now you got like prime time and later games strewn about the schedule. At home, Dallas Cowboys, Sunday Night Football.
As it stands right now, I cannot pick the Steelers as much as I want to.
I'm with you on that one. I could agree. At the Vegas Raiders. That's a win, man.
Gardner
Minshew and
it's probably a win. I'm gonna go with
first year. I mean, Pierce got them playing, but
do you notice that I just don't feel extremely confident with any of these games right now?
Well, how can you? I mean, we got to go back and say it's preseason again. Can we say that? Because last year we were a little more.
I don't trust preseason.
We still gave them like 11 wins last year when we did this. They ended up with 10. I mean, that was.
We were very close.
Yeah,
we were very close.
Okay, we got a pair of. We got the Jets and Giants on the schedule here.
So to be fair, we have them 5-1 right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the Jets and the Giants. Both New York teams, are they split, one away, one home, or are they both away?
They're both home games.
They're both home games?
One is a Sunday night, and then one's the Monday night before the bye week, so they get an extra day.
I'm gonna go win-win, and the reason I'm gonna go win-win is I don't have any faith in Mr. Overrated, and I'm not even sure he'll be playing at that point. And I also have no faith in Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I have no faith in Daniel Jones either. I mean, this is pretty substantial that we have the Steelers here at what?
7-1.
Yeah, 7-1 heading into their bye week. And you have the Commanders now on the road after the bye. And that's just
that should be a win.
Straight W for me. Then they host the Ravens.
I have to go win. And like I said, I can't. I'm going to pick both Ravens games as wins for us because until I'm proved wrong, right? Until they win, I can't pick against them. They find a way to beat the Ravens.
So right now, dude, the way we're looking at this, we're going to have them going into Baltimore with, oh, come on now. Sorry, I'm trying to do some quick counting. So they would be 8-1 coming into the Ravens. I mean, that's a pretty substantial mark.
It's a ridiculous mark. I'm going to tell you, I just looking at it, I don't see how they actually are 8-1. But when you take it game by game, I can see how they could get to 8-1.
Okay, I got to remember to put this on the Ravens docket here, too, as we're starting to get up against it. We got to get through the other teams, but it'll be a little easier. At Cleveland, Thursday Night Football, short week.
Loss.
Yeah, I have the same. It just doesn't feel... It almost feels dirty. Would you have
after
them...
After Ravens plus short week?
Yeah, it's just set up for failure. Now, can they rebound and go to Cincinnati on a mini bye and win in Cincinnati?
I don't know how to pick this game. And again, the reason being, I don't know what we are yet. So I am going to lean towards being conservative and say that's the game against the Bengals that they lose.
Okay. I can put that down. I do think that at some point, I think they could split, right?
I think they will split with the Bengals. So the other game, I'm going to go with a win, regardless of when it is, which is the last game of the year, right?
Okay, I'll put that right in there right now. We got W's for the final game of the year. Okay,
and I think they're going to beat the Browns. I think they'll split with the Browns. I think they sweep the Ravens, split the Browns, split the Bengals.
Then they have to go to Philadelphia, Baltimore.
Loss. They haven't won in Philadelphia in 100 years. It's a loss.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. Over to Baltimore again.
Win, because they're never going to lose to the Ravens again as long as we live.
Okay. And Kansas City Chiefs at home Christmas Day.
Probably a loss.
Okay. We have them as a 12-win team this year. I always say plus or minus. I'll say plus or minus 2, not plus or minus 1 on this one. I'm going to have to double back and see the Steelers stuff, but we'll go to the Bengals. They start at New England, which...
I want to say that's a loss for the Bengals simply because I want to say every game is going to be a loss for the Bengals. but the Patriots stink. So
at Kansas City, losses
because it's at Kansas City. I'm going loss.
At home against the Commanders, Monday Night Football. That's probably a W. At Carolina, probably a W. Home hosting the Ravens.
The Ravens have had the Bengals number of recent. I'm going to give it to the Ravens.
Okay.
I'm going to have them do a reverse home split. Okay. The Ravens win in Cincy and the Bengals win in Baltimore.
Okay. Sunday night at the New York Giants. W. Yeah, this isn't the Andy Dalton primetime Bengals where they just
it's not.
They turn into a pumpkin. Then they come back. They play in Cleveland, just your standard Sunday 1:00.
I'm going to give that one to the Browns.
Okay. So we got losses there. Okay. Hosting the Eagles.
All right. I think they win that game because it's in Cincinnati.
I'll go along with you, but I'm skeptic. They host the Raiders. That should be W's again. And then they go back to Baltimore.
Win.
Okay. They play at, and that's going to be all right, hold on a second. This is an important key detail. They play the Raiders, short week Thursday night football at Baltimore.
I just don't think they're going to split with I don't think they're going to get swept by the Ravens, but they could. Who did I give the first one to? I gave that one to the Ravens.
You gave it to the Ravens, yeah. So you just want to split them.
Short week does make a difference, though.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference for that.
And travel. All right, maybe. All right, I'm going to go Ravens sweep them.
Ravens sweep at the Chargers. Middle afternoon Sunday. Yeah, I don't like the Chargers enough. Bye week. We have them. What did we say they were going to do against the Steelers first? We have them beating the Steelers.
Yeah.
At home. At the Cowboys. Loss. At the Tennessee Titans. This juncture of the year. Ooh, you have them losing to the Titans. You think the Titans will be good enough this year? Improved?
I think they'll be improved. Yes.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to go with you on that one. Now they have another Thursday night game and they host the Cleveland Browns.
Well, we had them. I got it. No, I got to go with the Bengals in this one. They'll be mad, and I think they won't lose. They're not going to lose 5 division games. So
yeah, I'm hearing you on that one. They host the Denver Broncos at home. Okay. And then we said at the Steelers to finish the season, they're going to lose. They are a 10-win team.
2 winning records.
Yeah. It's make us a little nervous here. So we're going to go to the Cleveland Browns as we're getting up against this, Brian. I think we'll get this quick enough, though. How come I didn't get the other? I'm trying to get these formulas to come through too. Okay. Browns open up at home with the Dallas Cowboys.
Loss.
Yep. They go on the road, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Wow. Okay. I kind of think I'm going to go loss there.
I kind of think so too. They could get beat up by the Cowboys at home and then have to go to Florida September 15th. That's never good for AFC.
Who's the linebacker in Dallas that is
Micah
an idiot?
Micah Parsons.
Yeah, Micah Parsons. He's going to hurt Deshaun Watson the first game.
New York Giants at home.
Win.
Raiders in Vegas.
Probably a win.
Yeah. Commanders at Washington, doesn't it matters. At Philadelphia, losses. Hosting the Bengals and the Ravens back-to-back 1:00 Sunday games.
Well, then I gave them the win against the Bengals.
Right? Let's see.
And then they host the Ravens. I'll give them another win there.
Okay. And then right before the bye week, they get the Chargers at home.
Win.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think the Chargers are going to beat anybody in this division.
Yeah. So bye week's week 10. They go and play the Saints. Probably a win.
And the only reason is because I don't know a damn thing about the Saints right now.
Yeah, the Saints are an ugly football team. We'll see if Dennis Allen makes it a whole season as the head coach. Steelers Thursday night at home. We got them as wins. Off to Denver to play the Broncos. We beat up on them last year, but yeah, now they go back, play in Pittsburgh. We have them as losses. Hosting the Chiefs. Loss. Hosting the Bengals Thursday night football. I'm sorry. The Bengals are hosting. You gave this to the Bengals already.
Yep.
Then they got to host the Miami Dolphins for a Sunday night game after the mini bye.
Interesting. That's the only team that's playing the Dolphins right so far. We don't play them. The Bengals don't play them. I don't know if the Raiders or the Ravens play them or not. They might lose that game. Where is it?
It's at home, but December 29th. It could be iffy for weather for the Florida teams. Sunday night game.
I guess I'm gonna give that to the Browns.
To the Browns, particularly nasty weather for December 29th up on the lake.
Yeah.
And then to be determined date at Baltimore to finish out the season.
That's the one. And it could be if Baltimore were to. And that's the thing. I don't think anybody's going to be in a position where they've got seating locked up, right? And so I think they're going to have to play that game, and I think Baltimore probably wins that one.
Okay. Baltimore Ravens. Oh, come on. I'm just trying to look. There we go. Okay. I got the Ravens schedule. I'm just trying to.
What did we come up with the Brownies?
Brownies are a 10-win team. So we'll have to plug some of this stuff in across the AFC North of what we've already figured out. At Kansas City to start for the Ravens.
I think the Ravens are going to lose the first game.
Yep. I'm with you on that one. Let's see here. Give me one second as I do this. I had to reset up. Okay, here we go. Lost to start. There got the Raiders week 2 to open at home.
That's a win.
Okay, at the Dallas Cowboys.
Loss.
Woo. We think the Cowboys will be pretty decent. At home against the Buffalo Bills.
They're at home, so I'll lean towards Ravens.
Okay.
But I may like we get to week 3, I won't be able to because I'll be in Scotland, so I won't be talking to anybody. But I may be in Scotland going, no, they stink. Derrick Henry hasn't been good. They're not going to win that game. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, so then we've got they're at Cincinnati.
Didn't I already call this when I
you
said
called
that
it a win for the Ravens. Hosting the Commanders. Win. Okay, at Tampa Bay. Ooh, October 21st, Monday Night Football. Ooh, that's you've got a little bit of different preparation for this. And this kind of plays into, you had them losing to the Browns the next week in Cleveland for another road trip. So it kind of plays in that they'll have a short week and have to play the Browns.
Who's the quarterback there? That ex-Browns quarterback?
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, forget it. They're going to win that.
Okay. W's, losses at Cleveland,
Yeah.
Sunday, 1:00 at home, hosting a West Coast team, Denver Broncos.
Win.
Hosting Thursday night, Cincinnati Bengals. We gave this to
the Bengals because we gave the first one to the Ravens. Or did I say that because of the short week on the Bengals side that they would get swept?
Let me see here. Cincinnati Bengals schedule. It's tough to see here. We have the Bengals losing because it's a home game for the Ravens on the short week. So we gave the W to the Ravens. Yep. They follow up and they have a mini bye and have to play in Pittsburgh, but we had them already losing regardless.
Losing that. Yep.
They host or they go and they travel to LA to play the Chargers for Monday Night Football in the Harbaugh Bowl. Interesting. I know.
I don't think difficult. The Chargers are good.
No.
Right? But I don't really think the Ravens are that good either. In general terms, I think their defense will be solid. I think their offense can score, and there'll also be games where they do nothing at all. I'm gonna say that there's an upset, and that's the one game that the Chargers win, and the only reason is because of the trip to the West Coast.
Okay. Hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a mid-afternoon Sunday game. Loss. I got to put some losses on their schedule here.
I'll run with the loss. I don't know. I am not sure what the Eagles are yet.
Okay, they got to play the New York Giants.
That's a win.
After a bye week.
That's a win.
A week 14 bye. We already have them losing.
Embarrassing win.
We have them losing a Saturday game to the Steelers. That then parlays into a trip to Houston on Christmas Day.
They're gonna lose that game.
Texans.
CJ Stroud is gonna win that division this year. He's gonna and you watch. They might even have top seed.
Ooh, is playing the South. The rest of those teams. I like where you're going with that. I'd say depending on. Got to look at the rest of their schedule. They'll have a first place schedule were they a wild card? No, they hosted the Browns. So they won a division. They got to play everybody else. They got to play Buffalo and Kansas City still too. So, but still, yeah, it's them or Kansas City, I would think, are still the favorites for that. And then the final game, it'll be hosting the Cleveland Browns. We already put that on the Browns schedule as a loss. So the Baltimore Ravens. That can't be right. We have them as a 9-win team.
That can't be right.
I don't think so. I think my math. Yeah, dude. We have a loss to the Chiefs, a loss to the Cowboys, losing to the Browns. We have them losing 3 in a row before the bye. To the Steelers, Chargers, and Eagles, and then they're going to lose to the Steelers again. And
take that Chargers game back out of there. They're going to win.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I can't. They're not a 9-win team. Right, they're minimally a 10-win team.
But let me tell you what we've done essentially.
Well, we've won the division.
We've given the Steelers 12. We've given them 12. We've given them 12. 12 wins, and everybody else 10, which is interesting enough. And folks, it's probably not how it's going to play out.
This is how simple of it is, right? If we split with the Ravens this year, we're both 11-win teams.
Yeah.
Right. If everything else goes as planned, I just don't think. There's very few times anymore where I feel like you're going to sweep in this division, right? It's just, this is too tough of a division. There are too many good quarterbacks. There are too many good defenses. It's going to be hard. And the only reason I have the Steelers sweeping the Ravens in this division is because the Ravens haven't beaten us in 100 years. Same reason that I have us losing to Philly because we haven't won there in 1 billion years. And we oftentimes get humiliated when we go there. So, but it could go either way. Like your plus or minus 2 games, I think is very accurate. I think every team in this division can have a winning record. I think every team in this division has a shot to make the playoffs. It is, I think, the most competitive and best division in football.
Yep. I got to put this out. We usually have the worst, the tweet or worst take of the week. Unfortunately, it comes from somebody I actually respect and like. I say that unfortunately. But Trey Essex, former offensive lineman of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Crazy thought, but not implausible. What if the Steelers are taking this long to make a QB decision because they plan to start Fields and release Russ? I can't imagine Russ would be happy being a backup right now. Thought it was clear to me that after pulling rust after one successful series versus the Lions, he was the starter. So why the delay in announcing? Yeah, seems out there. I know, but idle minds, I tell you, no, stop it. Just stop it. Like,
I really love Trey. I mean, I love him. I think he's awesome. I think he comes up with some shit that makes me laugh, right? But he's just looking for attention. This is just throwing something out.
That's bad. David Todd called him out on it. He goes, crazy and implausible. You don't send a guy out as captain for the final preseason game, watch him drive the team down the field for a TD, then release him. Literally zero chance. Joey Bag of Donuts, friend of the platform here, said, I think it's because Tomlin likes messing with the media. If they were going to drop Wilson, they probably would have done it already. Yeah, gee.
Yes. Isn't that what I just said?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I will be honest with you. For those of you who used to follow me on Twitter, since I have very few followers now because of the gay guy that took over my account and is doing gay porn or whatever, my new account doesn't. I have been off Twitter pretty much. I might get back on a little bit during the season, but for anybody who was looking for my grown ass man gifs and the refs stink gifs on Twitter, you're gonna have to come back to figuring out where I actually am, because you're not gonna like what grown ass man gifts that guy gives you.
It's down there in the corner. It's at Brian E. Roach SCU. We're right up against it, Brian. A little long, but this will carry all of us over through the holiday weekend into our pregame show next week. Waiver wire claims are in. Tom Pelissero, NFL Network. Carolina Panthers, New England Patriots lead the way with the most claims. What you're going to see on this list, however, though, is just sticking with the AFC North. Bengals claimed KJ Henry, a defensive end from Clemson, via the Commanders. And then as we slide on through, let's see. The Steelers don't have anybody, by the way, it's of note. So I think that's the only team. Let me go back. Baltimore didn't have anyone either.
No.
Baltimore or Cleveland. So that's it.
Baltimore, nobody. Yeah.
No waiver claims for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. We'll probably see all of the practice squad stuff start to fill up here toward the end of the week. Steelers will have several days off and then come back for practice starting after the holiday.
I have a very important question to post to the 2%ers and the 1%ers who are left, right? As many of you know, for many, many, many moons, this was a mohawk, right? And now I have hair. Not good hair, but it's hair, right? Because I just let it grow in and I stopped doing it. Season's about to start. What do? Leave it like this? Or is it time to pull the mohawk back?
You need the mohawk for the season, dude.
I'm not listening to you. I'm listening to them.
Yeah, but I'm probably one of the 5 opinions you'll actually get. And with that, folks, we're going to close out the show. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, watching, longer show than usual, et cetera, et cetera. But we wanted to get all of this fine content in for you and give you some time to actually watch and listen to it. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. Leave a rating or review wherever you may be. My name is Joe. His name is Brian. Brian, thanks once again for joining us.
Happily.
That's right, my friend. And until next time, as we always do on this show, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.